All right, so we're going to get started. How's everybody doing today?
Great.
Woo-hoo!
Good.
Good. I know Deidre's also here, one of our LES support. She is driving right now, but um, she may be able to, correct me if I say something wrong. They always correct me. I'm always saying wrong
Hello,
stuff, crazy
everybody.
things. Hello, Deidre. All right, so today we have another webinar to talk about one-on-one visits. So all of you that are here should be health center LEDs, or you should be overseeing health center type residents. If you are AL only, you don't have health center, then you don't have to be in this webinar. You're welcome to stay if you want to learn something about it, but you are not, this is not something that you will be doing on a regular basis. So for health center only. So the first thing, let me share my screen really quickly. I sent this email earlier today with a few attachments. So if hopefully you had a chance to look at them or print them, if you like to kind of have the paper copy in front of you, feel free to do so, or you can open them on the side, but that's what we're gonna go over today, and we're gonna show you how to use all that. All right, so we'll get started with one-on-one visits. And if you guys have questions as I'm going through this, please feel free to ask them. I am recording this and we will send a recording. We figured out how to do it because you guys are still out of our system. So we will send it after. All right, so why do we do one-on-one visits? Well, first things first, it is a reg. We have to do it, right? It is a requirement that we have to do one-on-ones. But also it helps protect vulnerable residents. We have a lot of residents that without one-on-one visits, they wouldn't have engagement in their life throughout their day. So that is one of the reasons as well we are doing it. It prevents isolation and decline and supports survey readiness. Hello, Freedom. All right.
Hello.
Hello.
How are
So,
you?
doing good, thank you. So, what
Good.
is a one-on-one visit and what is not? It's a big difference. One-on-one visits should be intentional. So when we are going into to visit our residents, there should be a goal, a reason why we're doing it. It shouldn't be just, hey, I'm dropping off a word search. That is not a one-on-one visit. It should be based on assessed interest, and we'll kind of talk about that here in a little bit. It should be documented. So that's one of the things that I sent earlier today for documentation purposes. It should have meaning to that resident, and it should be relationship based. So again, it's not just popping in for 10 seconds. Hey, how's it going? Hope your day is going good. That is not a one-on-one visit. We should not just be to check a box, right? It has to be meaningful, relationship based, documented, and it is not a clinical task disguised as engagement. So it is not a CRCA or a CNA going in, helping a resident, clean up, take a shower, and kind of play music as they're doing it and be like, oh, that was a one-on-one. That is not a one-on-one. Now, who should get one-on-ones? These are high-risk residents, okay? So new admissions or recent room change. However, we'll have a caveat for a lot of these things, so just bear with me as we go through these slides. People that may have cognitive impairment could be a higher risk resident. They have limited mobility or decline. They've recently suffered some grief or loss. Frequent program refusals, someone in hospice or end of life, someone having weight loss or social withdrawals, or they're requesting additional visits. Now, because somebody's on this list, that does not mean that every single person or resident that fits this criteria should be on one-on-one, because isn't that your entire health center population? Yes, it is. So I want you to hear me loud and clear. We are not saying that every single resident that has one of these things or one of these criteria should be in one-on-ones, okay? And this is how we're going to determine who's on one-on-ones. So all of you now have a copy of the one-on-one needs assessment. So this is the first tool you're going to use. This tool is what is going to determine who from that high risk list actually needs one-on-one visits. Okay. So you're going to have a big pool of people that you're like, they could be one-on-ones, but this tool is going to tell you who actually should receive the scheduled one-on-one visits. So you're going to use this tool for all health center residents upon admission. So anytime a new resident comes in on admission, you're going to fill out this tool. What you're doing is for the first week, for the first 7 days, you are checking for all the criteria that is listed there to identify if they need one-on-ones. You're also going to update this quarterly or as needed. So let's say you do this assessment on the resident and they should not be on one-on-ones. Then the next quarter, you're going to check, do they need it now? However, you're only going to check that if you've seen a decline on the resident, or maybe they had recent loss, something has changed. But if the resident continues to come to group activities or things like that, you're not going to be doing the needs assessment for them. You're going to keep this in your one-on-one binder. And like I said, this is based on a 7-day documented period. And that will make sense here in a minute. But all of these questions that you see right there, you're going to answer it based on what is documented, not what you see, not what your LEAs, your life enrichment assistants are telling you, is actually in what has been charted and documented. At the bottom, there's a little rating scale, and that is the point system that is going to determine if a resident needs one-on-one or if not, and if they do, how often those visits should be and for how long. So all one-on-one visits are 15 minutes long, and you'll see that if a resident has 2 points or less, they have to have 3 visits per week. If they have 3 to 5 points, they will have 2 visits per week. If they have 6 to 8 points, they'll have 1 visit per week. But if they have above 8 points, that means that they will not require one-on-one visits. So this is our internal tool for assessment to determine who needs one-on-ones. This is not a state reg or a state assessment. The only time you will show this to a state, so state when they come over, is if they really are asking, like, but how do you know who needs to be on one-on-ones? Then you would show them this. But most of the time, they're not asking us for it. This is not something we have in Matrix Care either. This is, again, just an internal tool for us to determine who should be on one-on-ones. Any questions on this so far?
When will this be initiated and how long do we have to get, I got like 97 residents to
Yeah.
get this
So
done on.
we'll talk about the due dates and all that stuff at the end of the webinar, but that's a good question. What other questions about the tool?
You answered mine because I was going to ask, if it was going to be on Matrix, but so you answered it. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. All right. So here's another thing I want to make sure you guys hear loud and clear. Because a resident doesn't attend group programming, so the activities that are in your calendar, it does not mean that automatically they're a one-on-one, okay? A resident can attend 0 group activities and still not be on one-on-one visits, okay? So what that means is that a resident that is maybe in short rehab, right? Like Joni, you have a large short rehab community. Some of you have like 50, 60 beds that are short rehab. Those residents does not mean that they need to be one-on-ones. Some could be, but probably majority, they will not be on one-on-ones. If a resident prefers to stay in the room, again, that does not mean that they will be on one-on-one visits. If they decline group activities, or if they're like tired and they just don't want to come, that again does not mean that they will need to be on one-on-one visits. So some residents prefer independent engagement. And so it's our job to assess the engagement, not just the attendance. So before we assign one-on-one visits, you really have to think, is this resident being engaged independently? Are they watching TV? Are they talking on the phone? Are they visiting with family? Are they reading magazines? Are they reading books? Are they netting on their own, right? Are they doing things on their own? Family visits, do they have personal hobbies, right? Are they cognitively and socially stimulated independently? A lot of people are able to stay independent and be stimulated without our assistance. Now, the key here is that the documentation needs to reflect that engagement. And that's what Deidre talked about on the last webinar when we are charting group activity attendance and also independent. That's why independent charting is so critical. Because if you have residents that on their own are reading books, knitting in their room, working on the computer, playing games on their phone, doing these things on their own, we don't have to provide one-on-ones if it's charted. If it's not charted, then that's when we end up having a huge list of one-on-one residents that need these visits. And what that means is that then our teams, your LEAs, are overwhelmed with the amount of one-on-one visits that you have to do in a week, and then you cannot do group programming. And you cannot do all these other well-being engagement for your residents. So this is why charting is so, so critical.
So I have a question.
Yes.
So like when they're on their computers and they're, when I do an assessment when they come in, that automatically goes on my assessment form and goes into the computer that they like to be on their computer and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So is that a form of documentation, or do I actually have to document it on the sheet that you gave us?
The sheet
Like,
that
because that's
Deidre went
documenting
over,
twice.
the sheet that Deidre went over last week is actually your daily engagement charting. So anytime you see the resident on the computer, we should be charting that they're on the computer. The assessment that you're speaking about, I think, is about your initial assessment, right? The initial interview you do with them when they admit. Is that what you're talking about?
You broke up on everything, but yeah,
sorry.
like when I do an assessment and I put it in like their care plan, like their care plan says that they play games on their computer and all that. So do I still document on that piece of paper? Because I have been documenting here, and I just wanted to make sure that
your initial
even though it's care
assessment,
plan,
your initial assessment, admission assessment is separate from daily charting, engagement charting. So initial assessment, yes, you're saying this is what the resident likes, that you do your care plan, but then every time you see them do that thing, you have to document it, because that is going to determine truly how engaged they are. One telling you I like doing that but never do it, that doesn't mean that I'm engaged. So yes, you have to document it every day.
Understood. Okay.
So right here, this is basically the questions that are on that one-on-one needs assessment. So you guys can see it a little bit more clear. This is what is going to determine. So as you can see, you may have residents in your rehab or long-term care that are doing all these things. And once you get all these points, then they do not need one-on-ones. How many of your residents that are in rehab probably move independently throughout the campus? A lot of them. How many of them maybe are writing letters, complete puzzles in their rooms? Probably a lot of them. How many of them are reading letters, newspaper, books, cards, or other things in their rooms or in the common areas? Probably a lot of them. How many of them are watching TV? Pretty much every of your residents are watching TV in their room. How many of them like to listen to music, or they have a phone call, or they're doing crafts independently, or they have visits from families? So once you start looking at all these things, right, and you get the points in there, you will see that a lot of your residents that are in rehab or long-term care will not need scheduled one-on-one visits. So again, this assessment is what determines the need, not their attendance to the group activities. So a resident saying, I don't want to go to group activities because I'm here for rehab, that doesn't mean that they have to be on one-on-one. Any questions with that? Okay. So once you did your one-on-one needs assessment and you know these, let's say 5 residents out of 100 need one-on-ones truly, because that's what my assessment is telling me, then we move to the one-on-one visit schedule. So this is also on your email. And this is, again, an internal tool for us to keep track of who needs to be visited this week for one-on-ones. Once you guys move into our engagement platform, this will be digital. So, you'll use it for the meantime. Keep this somewhere where your LEAs can see it. Again, don't just keep it anywhere because HIPAA violations, but keep it somewhere where they know they're going to look at throughout the day, because this is more of a communication tool between you and your LEAs to ensure that the one-on-one visits are being completed. So the way that this works is you are going to write the resident's name, first name, and last initial. You're going to write how many visits that resident needs a week. And on the last section, you're going to write really short, quickly, what are those residents' interests? So you're going to take that from the assessments that you've done, from your care plan, everything that you know from the resident. The point of this is that really quickly, your LEAs can look at this and say, okay, Mary, she needs 2 visits this week, and she likes to do things around gardening, mystery books, playing Uno, and photography. So really quickly, as an LEA, I can go to this resident's room and do a one-on-one visit that is meaningful to that resident, right? Because probably listening to music or doing hand massages, it's not going to be meaningful to Mary. But if maybe I read a passage from her favorite book or we play Uno, that will be engaging to Mary. So once your LEA does their visit, then they put their initials on the day that they did it. So if you have a different LEA or yourself or even that LEA, you can look later in the week, say, okay, today is Thursday, right? And Mary only has had 1 of her 2 visits. Then we know we need to fit that other visit still this week for her. So on Friday, the other LEA does the visit, and you know really quickly that your one-on-one visits have been done. So really, when you identify all your residents, this is what your list is going to look like, something like this, okay? So you're going to have all your residents listed that based on the one-on-one needs assessment, need one-on-ones, how often or how many times a week they need a visit, and then all their preferences and interests. Now, one is not a reg, but state looks for this. Make sure that your LEAs are doing at least 1 or 2 one-on-one visits on weekends, Saturdays and Sundays, okay? They will kind of look for that trend. So make sure that at least a couple of your visits are happening on weekends. So again, the whole idea is that your LEAs are looking at this. It's okay, Bob needs a visit. Let me just get it done. We'll do it, right? And so this is a really quick way for you to check who are we getting towards the end of the week and still needs a one-on-one, right? Hey guys, we got to push for one-on-ones today, or we're doing really good and we are getting them all completed. A best practice that I've seen with our campuses is where they print this and they laminate it. And then with dry eraser, they write the resident's name, the number of visits, the preferences, and then, of course, your LEAs with dry eraser will put their initials. That is so you don't have to reprint and rewrite every week your residents' names and interests and things like that. So it's just easier. You just dry erase their initials at the end of the week and they get restarted. Or if a resident needs to come off one-on-one, you just delete them, add the new resident on there. So use this however you want. Other campuses do rewrite everything every single week. It's up to you, however you want to use it. Any questions with this tool?
I just have one.
Yeah.
I heard you say, for Saturday and Sunday. So Trilogy's policy, do they have activities on Saturday and Sunday?
Yes,
Okay.
7 days a week we do activities the same as weekdays. So weekends shouldn't look any different than weekdays, correct?
Okay, because I know we only do 1 day a week here for now.
Okay.
So I just didn't have the staff to be able to do an entire weekend. So okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Okay. So next we'll move to documentation. So this tool, I believe also Deidre shared it a little bit with you guys last time. This is the actual one-on-one documentation. So if state ever asks, hey, I need to know or I need to see Mary Smith's one-on-one documentation, this is the tool you're giving them, not this, not, let me go back. Not this, okay? So you're giving them the tool with the pink header. Again, this tool will be digital once you guys have access to everything. So paper is just for now. It's a band-aid as we are rolling everything out. Now, documentation happens in 2 places for one-on-ones. The first one is care plans, like Patty was saying. So you will still do your one-on-one care plan. We do have a webinar coming up on care plans on the 31st of March. So I'm not going to talk about how to create a one-on-one care plan today. You will get all care plan education later in the month. But the second piece where documentation happens is in the one-on-one charting. So again, if it's not here, if we don't write it here, it didn't happen. Doesn't matter if you have it on the schedule that I just showed you. If it's not here, then it's not true. So really simple how this works. You're going to put the date when the one-on-one visit happened, how long. So one-on-one visits should be 15 minutes long. And then write the progress note of what happened during that visit, short, simple, and then the initials of who completed that. So it was a URLEA, was it you, was it a volunteer, who was it? Now, how do you write a progress note? On that progress note, on that middle section, you want to make sure that we write what did we do during that visit? Why did we choose that thing that we did with the resident? How did the resident respond? And what is the follow-up? So if we say, visit a resident, she smiled, that's not good. That's not good. We gotta say, provided 15-minute one-on-one, right? The length of the time, how long was it? We did 15 minutes. Reviewing family photo album per resident preference. That's something she enjoys, so that would be on that list with the resident interest. Resident initially withdraw, but engaged in reminisce about grandchildren, maintain eye contact. So that's how she responded, and verbalized enjoyment. Plan to incorporate music for from her era next visit. So again, very simple. That's the formula. Make sure that anyone that is doing one-on-ones, your LEAs or documenting one-on-ones, they understand the 4 steps of doing a strong progress note. Questions on the documentation piece of one-on-ones?
I have a quick question, Daniela.
Yes.
I have a wonderful volunteer that does one-on-ones for about a 3.5 hour gap in our week. And is she able to use this tool as well?
Yeah, as long as she is writing the notes, right?
Yes.
And then you are overseeing that process, and we'll talk about more about that. So making sure that it's done correctly, right? All those things. Yep, that is not a problem.
Yep. She already does this independently on her own. So
Good.
yeah, it's already rolling,
Awesome.
but I just want to be sure.
Okay, now what happens if a resident refuses one-on-ones? We still gotta document it, okay? So all refusals, we always document, be it one-on-one or be in a group activity refusal. We invited a resident and say, no, I don't want to. We should always document refusal. So we're gonna document that we offered. We're gonna document the resident response, document the reason if provided. Maybe they say, I'm tired, or maybe they say, oh, I'm about to go to therapy, or I don't want you in my room right now, whatever it is. If we attempted to follow up later, we will also do that, document that. If a resident refuses, we will carry over the visit if appropriate. Okay. So again, very simple note, offered one-on-one music session per care plan, resident declined, stating fatigue, will reattempt tomorrow morning. Now, if we say we're going to reattempt tomorrow morning, we have to do that. We have to try it tomorrow morning and document what happened. If the resident says no, then we have to again document refusal. If his resident says yes, let's do that progress note saying that it happened. So again, do not skip charting refusals or count refusals as completed visits. So if we did not engage the resident, that was not a satisfactory one-on-one visit. Questions on this? You guys are so quiet. I wasn't on the first webinar, so I don't know if you all talked to Deidre. All right. Now, a few rules for one-on-ones. So one-on-ones can be completed by your LEAs, volunteers, clergy, families, CRCAs. So a lot of people can do one-on-one visits, right? But like kind of what I was explaining to Heidi, it must be overseen by the LED. It's your responsibility at the end of the day to make sure that those one-on-ones are happening, is documented correctly, and they align with the care plan. So again, if you see that maybe a volunteer did a one-on-one with a resident and they talked about dogs, but you know that that resident hates dogs, then that's a problem, right? We need to educate the volunteer, explain our schedule, your visit schedule that has the interest, and to follow those for visits. Again, if it's not completed, must carry over. We need to put reasons for delay, and it has to be by the resident's interest. The visits must align with care plan, and program must be adjusted if status changes. So again, if a resident declines, right, has a significant change, we're doing that assessment. We check the one-on-one needs assessment. They may need now 3 visits a week instead of 1 visit a week, right? So those things can shift as we are checking residents. So from an LED perspective, right, we are completing the needs assessment as needed. You are reviewing the weekly schedule. Again, that's going to give you a quick view on, are my LEAs or myself completing all the one-on-one visits? Do we still have time? Do we still have a lot to complete this week? That's a really quick view for you to check. And you're going to check on the charting completion for each resident. You want to make sure that the frequency is met, that is established. So if a resident needs 3 visits a week, right? Are we at the 3 visits or not really? We're ensuring the quality of the notes and ensure that any follow-up is being done. So if a resident status changes, declines, improves, they go to the hospital, there's something, a loss, the one-on-one plan, the care plan must be updated, and that's also going to change possibly the amount of visits we're going to do every week. Questions on this so far?
You said volunteers can do those notes on that sheet, right?
Correct.
So like the clergy, if they visit and do one-on-ones, they're also expected to kind of fill out that one-on-one paper?
They're doing one-on-ones, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep. Now, sometimes you may have residents that, like clergy, right, that they do a visit, but it's not a resident that is on one-on-one. It's more for religious purposes. You still want to document that kind of interaction and engagement, that could fall more under independent if they're not on one-on-ones, because it's something that is true to them. They are not really on a one-on-one list, right? It's something different. So that one could go either way. If you want to play safe, you could create the one-on-one charting sheet for them, and anytime clergy comes over, they write their notes, or you can write the notes. Because a volunteer or somebody else does a visit doesn't mean that you or the LEA can't write the note. They can tell you, this is what I did, this is what the resident's response was, and you just write it for them. So it's really up to you how you want to manage that process. Okay, so a few mistakes that we see or we've seen is doing too many group programs and forgetting about one-on-ones. So again, as you are making your calendar for the month, also evaluate the volume of one-on-ones that you have, so you are able to schedule your LEA's time appropriately. There's no really guidance on should we do one-on-ones on specific days of the week, in times. Again, state sometimes frowns upon that. They prefer it, up to the resident when they would like to have those visits or do that kind of engagement. So if I were you, I would stay away from saying Mondays is our one-on-one day, Thursdays and Saturdays, right? Try to have flexibility where things change and accommodate your residents' needs and schedules a little bit better. Again, no pressurizing residents with reduced mobility. So if you have residents that just cannot leave the room, right, or they are end of life, those a lot of the time will be on your one-on-one visit. Inconsistent documentation. Again, if it's not documented, it didn't happen, right? So we have to document. No system for refusals and no follow-up plan. So one-on-one visits are not a task. It's not an extra thing that we're adding, right? It is our commitment to residents who cannot access group engagement. But again, like I say, the caveat with that is that doesn't mean that somebody is not doing well because they're not attending group activities. I will be one of those people. The day that I'm in senior living, don't invite me to any activities. I'm not a social. Thank you, Patty. Maybe we'll do our own one-on-one visits, Patty. We'll just
No
together.
bingo.
Oh, Patty,
No.
love it.
26 years of activities. No, I'm done with bingo.
Right, I'm not a social butterfly. So will I be at a lot of the group activities? Probably not, unless there's wine or something or cookies. I'll be there for that.
Food.
Yeah, food, I'll be there. But most group activities I will not be in. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm not going to probably be engaged, because I will be. I'm probably going to have a jungle inside my room, right, with all my plants. I'll be doing that, checking for bugs, watering them, right? I may be listening to music. I'm probably going to be talking to my daughter, my grandkids, right? So I will be probably very engaged, and I will not need one-on-one visits. All right, so going back to Joni's question on when are we doing this? So our goal would be to implement this by 3/20. So we have about a month to do that. Now, I understand some of you do have large, and when I say large, I mean large health centers. So if you're like, hey, there's no way I can do this by 3/20, communicate, right? That's what we're here. Just tell us, talk to us, and see what we can do. If you do have a large population currently of one-on-ones, where you say, I have 50 residents on one-on-ones, I would start with those residents first doing the assessment. Don't worry about the rest. Get those done and determine truly from that list who needs to be one-on-one based on our one-on-one needs assessment tool, and then move on to the rest of your campus. Okay. So really, next steps to help you clear what we're doing is create that one-on-one binder where you're going to have your needs assessment form and your one-on-one charting sheet. The little calendar, you can have that if you want to inside the binder, if you think your LEAs are actually going to look at every time, or you can hang it somewhere else, right, that is somewhat private. You're going to complete your needs assessment for your residents. and identify who truly needs one-on-one visits and the frequency of those visits. You're going to post and begin your weekly one-on-one schedule for your LEAs. Again, that is just for your awareness and their awareness. The whole idea of that sheet or that calendar is so when LEAs are in between activities or they come in and there's, the activity doesn't start for a while, or they're kind of done with the day, but they still have, 15, 20 minutes, they can look at that calendar really quickly and say, oh, Mary still needs a for 15 minutes, and then, chart it and we're done. That's one less visit that is going to be needed this week. And then again, from your standpoint as the leader of your department, begin ongoing documentation and oversight that all the visits are being charted on the one-on-one form. Any missed visits are carried over appropriately, and the weekly completion and quality. Questions on this?
Can you,
So we need to do the assessment on all of our long-term and rehab people?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm losing my voice, it's hard.
It's all good. Yes, because you guys are coming online now. So once you get through this chunk of people, it's easy because you're just doing it upon admission. And again, a lot of these residents will be really quick for you to determine if they need one-on-ones or not, as long as we're documenting in group engagement and individual independent engagement. Joni, did you have a question?
I did. Are you able to share the slides so I can go over in meeting
Yep.
with my girls?
Yep.
Okay.
We will share the slides and the recording. Yep, that's no problem.
Okay.
Any other questions? Concerns? How are you feeling? Taking the temperature. So next week, is it next week? Yeah, March 3rd, right? It's next week, I think.
Yeah.
We are actually going to look into matrix care. Okay, so that all LEDs will be in the webinar next week, because we're going to talk about your assessments, because you guys, PCC is going away, right? And matrix care is coming online. So we want to
Okay.
make sure that you guys understand how to do the assessments in matrix care. So we're going to go over the admissions assessment, annual, SIG change, in our, oh no, it's not there. I think it's maybe a different one, quarterly. And then life stories, that is for memory care only life stories, but we'll kind of put it all in there together. So you'll get kind of the first peek to matrix care next week. Anything else? Any questions, comments? Any, you can always reach out individually as well if there's something you want to discuss.
No, I can't think of anything. I think it was very well explained.
Awesome.
I agree. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellie. All right, well, I will send the recording and the PowerPoint here shortly with all the tools again. But if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out myself, Deidre, Vanessa, Lana. We're all here to support you. And again, we will see you next week. And I can't wait to see you in person in just 2 weeks. Yay!
Yay!
All right, y'all. Have a good day.
All right,
Bye-bye.
thanks,
You too.
Danielle.
Thank you.
Bye. Have a good
Bye-bye.
one.